to you. I'm very excited about this program today called Home for the Holidays. I call it maybe Home for the Not So Sweet Holidays or Not So Sweet Home. But I think it's really important for us to talk about, before we head home to visit our elders or our parents, that we take some things into consideration, and we're going to talk about those today. I also want to tell you this program works for any time of the year that you're going home to visit your parents when you haven't been there for a while, or an older relative or friend. So if you haven't been home for a while and you've been planning those reservations on the plane, train, and automobiles, I'll tell you, we already know you're under some stress. And I want you to remember the most important thing that you can think about when you head home, and that is this visit is not about you. For real, if this was a vacation just about you, you'd probably be going off on a cruise by yourself or be laying on the beach reading a book. But if you're going home to visit your folks, I want you to keep in mind this really is about a time for your parents, and you want to make it a special time. So enjoy and go in with an open mind. It's really hard when we go home because we tend to think of things the way we left them, exactly as they were. Or we don't expect the clutter that we sometimes see. If we keep an immaculate home and it doesn't look that way when we get to our folks, it's easy to become critical. So just go in with that open mind and know if it was always a little cluttered, it isn't going to change. It may have gotten a little bit worse since you were there. But on the other hand, it's one thing to be open-minded, and another thing when you go in and it looks like that your parents or your parent has become a hoarder. We have lots of programs on mmlearn.org. We have an excellent one on hoarding that was presented by Dr. Weiss. If this is something you were to face, there's plenty of information out there for you. But that's not what this whole program is about, but just reminding you about other things that you can learn with us. There are key things that you need to look for, and one of those is the general appearance of your parents. And we all hear this, to look for weight gain or weight loss. But I like to mention that a lot of times it's not apparent. When we're wearing heavy clothing, big sweaters, coats, you may not recognize a weight gain or a weight loss. But it's when you put your arms around somebody and you can feel their bones, or you can feel that they've really put on a lot of weight. Those might be areas of concern for you. Swollen ankles, those kind of things that you can take a look at. Their general physical appearance, their hair, their nails, body odor, cleanliness of the clothing. My father was a very neat man, but I'll tell you, he seemed like he always spilled on his shirts. And I can remember my mother always saying, "John, you need to change your shirt." If John always was spilling on his shirt, he's still going to be spilling on his shirt. So I don't want you to go in like a crime scene investigator. This is not CSI, Home for the Holidays. This is just looking at changes, gradual things that are happening. And of course, if you see something that is just majorly concerning, you need to take immediate action. But most of this is just a time for observance. One thing that I want you to be especially observant of is bruising. We're not talking about major abuse here that looks like somebody's been beaten. We're talking about bruises that can be because your parents are falling, maybe because they're bumping into furniture because they can't see. It might be their glasses or diminished eyesight, or they might be on blood thinners and they're not getting their blood levels checked. Bruises are a real indicator that you should be concerned and be taking action, and those are the things that you have to decide what's an immediate danger, life-threatening, and what's something you should just be watching for. The house may have a buildup of newspapers. We're all the kind of folks, I think, that want to know that tomorrow I may have time to read this. Our parents were people who were brought up in a period where they really did save things and use the newspaper to put on the bottom of the bird cage or for the dog or to take out garbage in. We just need to know that maybe they're not strong enough to lift all those newspapers out to the curb anymore, and they don't have a good enough container to put them in. Bills not being paid are a real concern. The cleanliness of the home we've already talked a little bit about, and we'll talk more. Catalogs buildups is a very important thing to look at. During the holidays, even in my own home, I'm seeing tons of catalogs come in. But if you see that your folks are getting catalogs because they're on mailing lists by people because maybe they're buying things off of QVC at night, they might be up at 2 o'clock in the morning purchasing items from television because they're isolated, alone, having trouble sleeping. sleeping issues in the elderly is huge. We did a whole program on that. You can look at that at mmlearn.org as well too. But I want you to know all of these things kind of work together to paint a picture of what's going on with your folks. Lots of requests for donations. Some of those phone calls from solicitors are really interesting. This is real fraud and abuse. I want to tell you how somebody can start encouraging your folks to talk, make them feel not so alone, make them feel important, and then they get a donation, and then the donations keep going, and it's different organizations. They build trust. Be very careful. Answer the phone while you're there. See if there are solicitors calling. In the kitchen, expired foods. Let me tell you, if we all went in our pantry, we can find expired foods. I recently took some time off from work, cleaned out a pantry, cleaned out a lot of things during that week, and I can tell you I found expired food in my pantry from 2005. I was embarrassed. But I want you to know we have to look at this because this is the health and well-being, quality of life for your folks. Kitchen and the milk that has been outdated, poultry, meats, things that are in the fridge that have outdated, expired. We need to get rid of them, but you need to make your parents maintain their dignity while you're doing this as well. And you're going to come up with a plan when you leave for how to prevent this from happening in the future. Lack of appropriate food. Look in the pantry and the refrigerator and see if the food is appropriate. Are they eating healthy food? I want you to know this is a great time, too, that this could be a wonderful gift to put together an emergency box. Think of all the hurricanes, power outages from freak ice storms that have happened. What a wonderful gift to give your family, a flashlight and batteries and a radio, some things that will really work for the year should they lose electricity. And what kind of food could they prepare if they do lose electricity? What a wonderful gift to give your folks if they were to get sick, that they would have those items, some saltines and ginger ale and things like that in the house. So use this time also to be calm if you find they don't have what they need and make it a gift. Perfect idea. The bathroom, please, again, I don't want you to feel like a detective, but medicine cabinets are an important place to look to know how your folks are doing and talk with them about their medications. When you look at any medication container that is prescribed and filled in a pharmacy, they're required to put the date that it was filled on it, when the med will expire, and how many pills were dispensed. So if on the container it says to take 1 pill per day, and the prescription was filled on the 1st of the month, and now it's the 15th of the month and all the pills are still there, they may not be taking them, or they may be taking 2 a day. You can just count back to the date and see how close you are. We've had a pharmacy consultant that has come in and spent a lot of time teaching us about over-the-counter meds, expired meds, taking medications with grapefruit juice. So use our films, learn, treat yourself, get your folks to watch them with you. mmlearn.org has lots on our catalog. This is not a advertisement for our programs, but I think it's a great time to share some of the things that are there for your use. Automobiles are another wonderful way to learn about your parents and how they're doing. If there are an inordinate amount of dents on the car, could be a sign that we're having some trouble seeing, reflexes might not be as good, maybe time to be talking about driving issues. Look at the inspection sticker, see if it's current. Is the oil getting changed? How do the tires look? The most important piece of advice that I can give you about going home for the holidays or home at any time is it's very easy to take over and want to drive for your parents. Sometimes they want you to drive. They don't want you to see how they drive, or they would rather you do it. Please at least take 1 trip with your parents while you're home. Let them drive the car. You sit in the back seat or the passenger side. Just feign for a minute that you would like not to have to drive this one time, and you'll drive after that. See how they're doing when they drive the automobile. Money is tight for everybody. We are in a very difficult economy. When I think about the cost for utilities and water, it is extraordinary throughout the country and the world. And like most all of us, our parents are trying to conserve. I will say that if you're finding that the heat in the house, because they haven't turned on the air, is too hot, it's too cold because they've not turned on the heat system, they've set up a lot of little heaters around the house thinking that's cheaper than heating the entire house. All of these might be signs that there's some monetary problems or an over-concern about money. The other thing is, are these heaters safe? Are the cords safe? Do they tip easily? Can they trip? Maybe one of the gifts that you're going to be buying is a safe heater and getting rid of the old heaters. Don't make a big issue out of it, but please, this is a most important issue for safety. And do they have a smoke detector that's working? I bet you mine isn't at home. I should go home right after this and check mine. Please check yours. Do the same for your folks when you go home to visit. Safety in all the things we're talking about is imperative. Are they remembering to lock the doors? This might be a sign of memory. The other thing is, are they turning off the water? Do you find the water is still running? Or do they leave the oven on? All of us do this at some time or another. I'm always grateful when I wake up in the morning and I've left the oven on all night that my husband woke up behind me so I can turn it off so he won't get angry. But it is something to look at, because if your parents are having cognitive issues, memory issues, and it's beginning to fail them in being able to be safe, those are issues that might be immediate jeopardy. Or it's something we need to start taking into consideration and coming up with a plan for. Another thing we don't think about very often is how worried people get about their safety. And this might be a sign that they're not feeling secure. Do your parents keep checking the locks? Do they lock the door and then go back 10 times to make sure they did it? Might be a memory issue, might be an anxiety issue, an isolation issue, a safety issue because they've had a problem they haven't wanted to tell you about. Just be observant. Please stay calm. Be supportive. Maintain your parents' dignity. Little notes to yourself, I have them all over. You probably do too. But I have to say this was the one thing I missed with my own mother when she was suffering with dementia, and that was she wrote notes to herself all the time. And I didn't realize how impaired she really was. And that always makes me sad that I missed so many signs. But it was later in life when I went through some of her papers that I would see notes to herself that she was even reminding herself where each of her children lived and what our names were and how she was making those connections. Working so hard to keep things in order. If you see too many notes, too many calendar items, wanting to write down everything that you're saying, it might be an indication that there are some cognitive issues, and that we can talk about it another time, but all the things that we're looking for when we're home for the holidays. To look a little bit more about the memory is not asking questions that can be answered with yes or no, but asking those open-ended questions. If you say to your mother, Mom, do you still go to Bunko? She can say yes or no. But if you say, Mom, who's still in the Bunko group? Who are the folks that belong to Bunko with you now? Who drove to Bunko last time you went? If you ask any questions that require someone to use their short-term and long-term memory, it's going to give you more of an idea of where they're at than whether you ask yes or no. See if they call you by name, and how about their grandchildren and their nieces and nephews, or do they refer to them as your children or your father's brother, that they're not having a good time with names or recalling places. This is a great way to think about their memory issues. I'm always the first one to say I like to make coffee for myself because I like it the way I like to drink it. When I go home, I have to remember that I need to let someone else make the coffee, and maybe they like it differently. But when you're visiting your parents, can they even sequence those actions anymore? Do they get distracted from when they pour the water or put it into the pot, or do they forget to turn it on? Sequencing and making toast, making coffee, doing things like that, don't take over all of it. Let them do something for you and see how they do. Plus, they like to feel that they're taking care of you as well. They don't want you to come in and take over everything. Does one parent or one spouse or partner answer all the questions? That can be a real sign that somebody is compensating for someone else and they don't even know they're doing it. So you ask your mother a question, but Dad always answers. Great idea is to take your parents out alone, spend a little bit of time with each one, even if it's just in the backyard with your dad for a few minutes, and doing some time alone with your mom in the kitchen and doing those questions and answers. It's nice to give them a few minutes by themselves anyway. Don't stay at home the whole time. Go out. This is really important to see how your family does and how do they navigate a place they haven't been before. I always say, don't go to the old restaurant that everybody goes to, that everybody knows what's on the menu. Get your folks to go to a new restaurant with you. I have a colleague that was telling me that her mother can't make decisions anymore from a menu, and I remember this with my mother. You won't know that unless it's a new menu, and if they say to you, I'm going to get whatever you're getting, dear, That usually means they don't want to pick, they're having trouble making decisions, they can't read maybe. Maybe it's an eyesight issue, having problems there. So it's very telltale. Seeing if they can get to the restroom by themselves. Can they handle a new situation? So take the time. Go out with your folks. Emergency numbers. Where are they? Are they easy enough to read? Are they in an accessible place? We all should have emergency numbers. And if your folks don't have them, help make up a list. What a wonderful gift. Make it a pretty piece of paper. Make it a nice book, something that they can find easily, and help them with it. And make sure your name and number is there so that they can call you, or a friend or family member can do that as well. Some other things to consider. Look at those eyeglasses. See if they're broken. See if they're scratched. See if your family member is able to still clean them and keep seeing through them. Do they need an eye exam? Dental appointments, are they being kept? How do the teeth look? How does the mouth smell? Routine doctor visits. Money, always money is issues. And you don't have to get into your parents' bank account to talk about it, but you can ask them where they're still banking. How do they do their banking? Are they having any trouble? Just some questions to see if your folks need some assistance in that regard. And there are so many agencies and community assistance that's available. And we do tons of programs on that too. But I want you to know fraud and elder abuse is rampant. And you do want to protect your parents and their money and their banking. And let them know that you are concerned for them just like you're concerned for yourself. What to give your parents for presents? Oh my gosh, this has been a real issue for all of us in my office this year. Everybody who got an iPad wants one for their family because they think it's going to be so much easier for their parents than their computer. The same with an iPhone. I want you to know, unless you're going to stay for a while after you get this gift, or unless you know that your parent is amazingly adept with electronics, please do not be purchasing iPads and iPhones for people who are not able to handle them. Now, I want you to know I work in an organization that has 800 residents, and some of these folks could not handle an iPad, and we have others who could teach me about applications. So just know who your parents are, and don't think because it's easy for you that it will be easy for them. Do think about those gifts that can be just amazing, like phones that pre-dial and have a picture for 911, or have very large keys so they can read them easily, making life simpler. An easier way to get the newspapers out to the curb for the recycle day. All of those items, just think about those gifts and let them make sense. Get that emergency packet together. If I could give you the most important piece of advice probably from all of this, if your parents still go to church or members of a church, go with them. Don't stay in bed that day. Go to the synagogue, go to the church, go to Mass, to the services of their choice. Because I can tell you, I spent 1 year as a pastoral care nurse, and I learned more when family members came in town, because they would share with me, the family members, gosh, it looks like mom is having problems. Or other members of the church would go up to the daughter and say, oh, I'm so glad you're here. We've been so worried about your mom. Some days we think she's going to drive right into the rectory. You'll hear more about what's going on with your parents, or you might hear statements like, we never see your parents anymore. They don't come to church anymore. Could that be depression, isolation? Are they having trouble driving? Please know that that church is going to want to hear from you too. When you go home, this may be the greatest asset that you have to call and ask them questions to see if they can help you, if they can guide you into community services that are available, or what's going on to get your parents out. Go to church with your parents. Remember, when you go home, you may have family who live in that town. And as I said from the very beginning, this visit really isn't about you. This is about the family. This is about your parents. This might be about your siblings. It's easy to find fault when you go home. I can promise you that you will find everything that's wrong, and it's hard to find a lot right. And it's easy to blame your siblings who are there all the time. Why aren't they fixing it? Why is the yard looking like that? Why would they let my parents drive a car that has bald tires? Remember, your family misses a lot of things because they're there all the time. You don't know what they're dealing with day in and day out. Make this really home for the holidays a nice time, an enjoyable time. Do not use this time to find fault with your siblings. Make notes to yourself so when you get home you can have discussions, but not during the Christmas holidays, not to make this the time to make grievances with those that you love. When is the time to talk about the future? I love that the gentleman who put together this program for me put the 2 glasses down here of champagne, because this is enough sometimes to make you want to drink. Yes, it's never too soon to talk about the future. It's never too soon to talk about advance directives and important forms and things that need to be signed and done. But I want you to know that Christmas Eve may not be the best time to ask for your parents to fill out their DNR or do not resuscitate out of hospital requests or their advance planning or their wills. But it is a time that you can ask if your parents have this, and if there's a time when you could come back and help them, or who are they using for that. You can open the discussion, but this just shouldn't be the time to put all the emphasis on getting it done while you're home for this minute. And you can even broach these subjects before you go home if you have some time. Would this be a good time for me to set up some time to spend with you to do that? Lots of information online about advance directives. You can never learn too much. Remember, it has to be appropriate to your state, so I don't want to give you some advice from here today, but lots of questions about that. What do you do if things don't look right or there is immediate jeopardy? Well, you know when you have to jump right in. That means it's life-threatening, or it could be life-threatening in the very short term. If you're an only child, sometimes this can be easier because you get to be the sole person making the decision. On the other hand, if you're an only child, it can be very lonely that you're making these decisions by yourself. If you're a member of a family, they may not want to hear what you think during this time. Like I told you, unless this is imminent and immediate jeopardy, I would tell you to wait till you get home to talk with your family and decide what's most important and what needs to be dealt with first and how to proceed. I want you to make this holiday and all your visits home with your family the best that it can be. And the way to do this is to make sure you know it's not about you. Don't go in so tired that you can't enjoy it. Recognizing that when you get home, there are so many community services that are available to you. There are so much information on the web with us at mmlearn.org to help you with those problems. Yeah, it might be time for your folks to move to an assisted living or to get help in the house from a home care agency or to move to a senior center. I don't know. But what I do know is that we're here to help you, and you can contact us by emailing us at info@mmlearn.org. You can send us an email right by clicking on the little envelope at the top of your program and sending us an email from that. We'll get back with you. Most questions are answered within 72 hours. Tons of programming is available on mmlearn. We're here to help you. Most of all, what we want to do is wish you happy, wonderful, healthy holidays with your family and loved ones. Thanks for joining us.